The explosive confrontation. HOA Karen screams when I block her view with my ranch fence. Didn't know I own the whole mountain. Narrator, monologue style. You ever just want peace? I mean real peace, the kind that comes when you walk outside, smell pine needles in the air, and don't hear a single soul telling you how to live your life. That's what I was chasing when I bought the ranch. A quiet slice of mountain, tucked right above this fancy neighborhood that looked more like a resort brochure than a real place to live. I didn't think much of the houses below me. I figured, they stay down there, I stay up here, everyone wins. But then she showed up. "Karen, the what do you think you're doing?" she shrieked like I'd run over her poodle or something, and she bellowed, "I'm a squire. It may be your land, but we all share the mountain view. This fence blocks my entire panoramic morning coffee experience. That's not just rude, it's a violation of neighborhood standards." She pointed one lacquered nail at me like I was standing trial. Yes, as HOA president, I have the authority to maintain the aesthetic value of this community. "You're threatening property values, sir," like she was addressing a delinquent child. Narrator, but I didn't pay it much mind. I thought I was above it all, literally and figuratively. Turns out, when a woman like Karen loses a few inches of her precious view, she doesn't just knock on your door, she kicks it down. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting," she shrieked, red-faced. "You'll be hearing from our legal committee." I dropped the post driver with a heavy thud and leaned against the unfinished fence. "Ma'am," I said, "you do realize this fence isn't in your HOA? I'm not in your neighborhood. I'm above it. Don't you dare speak to me like that. You're part of the visual community." Visual community. Just then, my ranch hand, Sam, pulled up in the truck with a load of supplies. He paused when he saw the scene. Me, leaning on the fence, Karen looking like she was about to pop a blood vessel. Sam L. Karen turned on him like a siren. "You're trespassing too." Sam gave her a lazy wave and stepped out of the truck. "Lady, we got permits. County clerk stamped and notarized. You ain't got a leg to stand on. Karen, permits can be revoked." I raised a brow. "You gonna call the sheriff on me for fencing in my own mountain?" She smiled, slow and venomous. "You think this is just about a fence. You just declared war. And narrator, I should have seen it coming. The way the air changed, how the breeze suddenly felt like it was warning me, like the mountain itself was trying to whisper, 'She's not done.' But I thought that was the end of it. One bad encounter with a control freak. I had no idea she was just getting started. The next morning, I found the flyers, printed in glossy color, stuffed into every mailbox at the base of the ridge, and stapled to my mailbox post like a wanted sign. What? My face wasn't on the flyer, but the photo of the half-built fence sure was. There were hashtags. View, vandal. Fence, felon. Save, our sunset. I was Sam, walked up behind me, reading over my shoulder. "She made you a villain," he said, shaking his head. "I'm the devil with a fence," I muttered. "Better than being a devil with a wine fridge and a drone, I fear." "Oh, what?" Sam pointed toward the tree line. Sure enough, blinking red in the distance, a drone hovered just above the fence posts. "She's spying," Sam said. I walked back inside, made a cup of coffee, sat on the porch, watched that drone for a full minute. Then I grabbed a slingshot I hadn't touched since high school and walked right out to the edge of the fence line. Karen's drone buzzed a little closer, probably zooming in. I didn't even hesitate. One smooth draw. Snap! The rock hit the propeller and the drone spiraled into the dirt with a satisfying crunch. From the distance, I heard a shriek echo through the trees. Narrator, that was the day the gloves came off. The next. What she didn't know was that I'd already lost everything once. I didn't come to this mountain just to run away. I came here to build something that couldn't be taken from me again, and I didn't care if Karen screamed until the sky cracked in half. This fence was going up. By Friday, I had the full crew working double shifts. Ink neighbors walked by and wouldn't meet my eyes. Others gave me half-hearted thumbs up when Karen wasn't looking. But then she said softly, "About time someone stood up to her." Narrator. That's when I knew this wasn't just about a fence. This was about freedom, dignity, the right to stand on your own land and not be ruled by someone else's anxiety and thirst for power. And yet, in the pit of my stomach, I felt something deeper. Karen wasn't just a bored housewife with control issues. No, there was something else going on. Because when I got home that night, there was a letter taped to my front door. Handwritten. Curvy, overly formal cursive. The no signature. This a high-resolution image of my entire property, with red lines drawn through the hills. Narrator. Voice darkens. That's when I realized. Protect. She thinks she owns this mountain. Asto be continued. Narrator. Voice heavy with memory. You ever notice how trouble never starts with a bang? Sometimes it begins with something as simple as a folded brochure, or a phone call you almost don't answer. T. I wasn't born into land. I wasn't raised around cattle or wire fences. I was born into courtrooms, cement walls, and deadlines. 6 months before Karen ever knew my name, I was sitting in a corner office in downtown Houston. A land use attorney making too much money, working too many hours, helping developers buy and slice up land like birthday cake. I was good. Too good. Zoning battles, easements, water rights, I made them disappear for the right price. I knew every loophole, every clause, every game in the book, and I played it, until one day. I looked up and didn't recognize the man in the mirror. Tired eyes, caffeine stains on my teeth, bank account full, soul empty. That's when the letter came. It was from my grandfather's estate attorney. Man had passed away 2 years ago. No family but me. He left behind a parcel of land no one wanted, tucked into a mountain range a few hours outside of Boulder, completely undeveloped, no utilities, no roads, just raw earth. The letter came with one sentence circled in red ink. Let the land do for you what money never could. Narrator, I quit the next morning, walked away from the firm. My coworkers thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was, but something in me said, if I don't go now, I'll die behind a conference table. So I packed what I had, sold what I didn't, and left the city behind. The first time I stood on that ridge, wind in my face, looking out over that valley, I felt something break loose in my chest. It was freedom. It was silence. It was mine. The land records confirmed it. My grandfather didn't just own a lot, he owned everything above the gated community where Karen and her HOA reigned supreme, 1,000 acres of unclaimed rugged mountain. Zoned agricultural. Outside the HOA's jurisdiction. Outside their control. So when I started building the ranch, a cabin, a stable, a modest perimeter fence, I did it by the book. County filings, surveyors, registered blueprints, but no amount of paperwork could prepare me for the storm named Karen. Flashback, community welcome party, 3 months prior. She introduced herself to me at a cookout held in the community's shared park. I wasn't invited, but a neighbor, Carlos, a retired firefighter, waved me over when I passed by. I walked up, shook hands with a few folks, smiled politely. Karen was already watching me from across the table. A tall glass of sangria. In hand, sunglasses perched just so. You must be the mystery man living above us, she said, voice silky with fake sweetness. I offered a polite smile. I'm Jake, just getting settled. She leaned in, whispered like we were co-conspirators. You know, most people in this area work with the HOA when they build anything. Keeps things tidy. Peaceful. I'm outside your zone, I said, sipping iced tea. Her smile froze, just slightly. Yes. For now. Narrator, back to present. That moment stuck with me. Not what she said, but how she said it. Like she was planting a flag. Like the mountain was hers and I was just squatting. But I brushed it off. Figured I'd stay quiet, stay polite, and we'd coexist. I was wrong. The HOA meeting started getting strange. I didn't attend, but people started telling me what was being said. Hushed warnings from the few kind neighbors who dared talk. Mrs. Delaney told me Karen was pushing new bylaws, proposing a visual preservation ordinance that would allow the HOA to petition the county to protect the community's aesthetic integrity from invasive development. She used my fence photos as examples, called it a rural blight. And then there was the developer. His name was Lance Brigham. Slick suit, flashy car, handshake like a cold fish. I recognized the type. We met once, accidentally. Or so I thought, at the feed store in town. He struck up a conversation about barbed wire. Then asked casually, "So, how many acres you running up there?" I told him, not thinking much of it. His smile grew sharp. "That's a hell of a footprint. You ever think about subdividing? We've got buyers begging for mountaintop views." Told him no thanks. A week later, he was sitting at Karen's outdoor patio, sipping wine like they were old friends. That's when it clicked. Narrator, darker, graver. This wasn't just about views. Karen wasn't panicking over some lumber and wire. She was positioning. She wanted control, not just for herself, but for them. The HOA, the developers. They didn't like that the land above them wasn't theirs. They couldn't regulate it. They couldn't profit from it. So they were going to force me out. More neighbors came forward quietly. One guy, Eric, a single dad, told me he got a notice on his door that said if he didn't vote for the new ordinance, his overdue landscaping fine would mysteriously increase. Another woman, Sarah, said Karen had tried to get her disinvited from the PTA gala because she interacted with known antagonists. Me. She was trying to isolate anyone who supported me. Classic control tactic. Divide. Conquer. Silence. Flashback. Karen and the realtor. One morning, I took a hike before sunrise. Just me, a thermos of coffee, and a pair of binoculars. From a high ledge, I spotted Karen down below, walking the trail with someone in slacks and a blazer. They were pointing up at my ridge. I saw her gesture, saw the realtor nod, saw them shaking hands. I knew that handshake, a pre-sale survey. That's when the pit in my stomach turned into full-blown rage. Narrator, sharper, colder, she's planning to take it. Not just stop the fence, not just fine me. She wants to flip my land. She's already plotting to strip it down and parcel it out into boutique Mountain View villas. And the only thing standing in her way is me. So I did something I hadn't done in 6 months. I opened my old briefcase, dusted off my legal pads, pulled up the county land records, tax filings, and title chains. I mapped out every inch of property I owned, not just the ridge, but the entire bluff, the water access trail, and even the overlook that Karen used for her sunset yoga sessions. They were all mine, deeded, inherited, filed and forgotten by the rest of the world. Banned Karen? She had no idea who she was playing with. Narrator, steely resolve. This wasn't just a fence. This was my line in the dirt. They pushed too far. Now I was going to push back. And I wasn't just going to build the fence. I was going to remind them exactly who owns this mountain, and what happens when you corner a man who's already lost everything once. That night I wrote a letter, not to Karen, to the county zoning board, with attachments. Dropped it in the mail with a second copy to the state ethics office, and then I called a friend. A reporter. Narrator. Final words of chapter. The war wasn't coming. It had already begun. Karen thought she was going to bully me into submission. What she didn't know is that I came to this mountain to be alone. But if she wants a fight, then I'll give her one loud enough to echo through every empty condo she's dreaming about building. To be continued. The conspiracy deepens. Narrator. Voice sharp, controlled. You ever feel something shift beneath your feet? Like the ground's been hollow all along and you didn't know it until it cracked? That's what the next few days felt like. One by one, the layers peeled back. And what I found beneath the surface. And it started with a text from Sarah, the kind neighbor, single mom, 2 kids, ran the community garden. She had always been nice in that quiet way, like she was afraid kindness might cost her. The message read how I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my jacket, hopped in the truck, and made the drive down the ridge into the valley. The HOA was hosting an exclusive members update at the private clubhouse, a high-ceilinged stone lodge where they held wine tastings and yoga classes. I wasn't a member. I didn't care. I waited by the back, near the loading dock, where Sarah cracked open a service door and waved me in. I ducked through, kept to the shadows. What I saw stopped me, cold. Karen was standing at the front, flanked by a developer, not Lance Brigham this time, but another man. Mid-50s, tan, clean-shaven with a Rolex. His name was Carl Dawson. On the projector behind her were my drone photos. Zoomed in, cropped, spun with her voice dripping condescension. Karen, from the projector. As you can see, the ridge development has begun. Jake, the individual building this unsanctioned structure, claims immunity from HOA rules due to a technicality in the plat boundary. What he's really doing is destroying our home values, one illegal fence post at a time. The room murmured. Someone asked, "Can't we sue?" Carl Dawson stepped up like a vulture. Carl, sleek, cold. We've actually secured an option to purchase that mountain. Jake doesn't know it yet, but there are heirs in the title filings. Legacy parcels, disputed water access. Once we acquire the top ridge, legally, we can clean this up and add 17 luxury lots. Narrator, growing fury. It was a lie, all of it. The title was solid. I'd reviewed it myself. No liens, no overlaps, but the way he said it, the way they cheered, they were preparing to steal my land with a smile and a pen. And Karen? She wasn't just a nosy neighbor anymore. She was an accomplice. I slipped out before anyone saw me. Sarah followed, white-faced. How then they'd been working with the county assessor. Turns out Carl had a cousin in the assessor's office. They'd submitted revised boundary maps claiming historical ambiguity and where my ridge began. And the cherry on top, they filed a petition to have my land reclassified from agricultural to transitional residential. If that passed? Pro-narrator. Slow, deadly. They weren't just trying to buy me out. They were trying to break me, bankrupt me with bureaucracy, strip me down with the same tricks I used to win court cases in Houston. I was staring at a mirror version of myself, colder, hungrier, and funded by HOA dues. Wasn't the same man anymore. I made a plan. I didn't have money, but I had knowledge, and dirt. And sometimes, dirt is more powerful than gold. I started with Lance Brigham, the first developer who'd approached me. After some digging, I uncovered his recent lawsuits. 6 failed projects, some of them shut down due to environmental violations. One in Nevada involved illegal dumping. One in Arizona involved bribing a county planner. Guess who filed that bribery complaint? His former partner, none other than Carl Dawson. Narrator, dark smile. Oh yeah, the snakes were feeding on each other. Karen didn't even realize she was in bed with a traitor who'd stab her the second she got expensive. So I did what any good narrator of chaos would do. I lit, and I wrote an anonymous tip to the local newspaper. To the headline ran 2 days later. Developer Carl Dawson, linked to shady deals, faces ethics review in 2 states. That was step 1. Step 2, I approached my old colleague, Samantha Cho, a lawyer still in Houston who owed me a favor. She specialized in land use law. I sent her everything. She called me back with a slow whistle. "Jake, this is dirty. The reclassification petition, it's completely illegal. They forged parcel surveys." She filed an emergency injunction with the county land board. Hearings were set. The board would have to pause any changes. A pause was all I needed. Narrator: building storm. I wasn't winning yet, but I had them off balance. The she started pulling her blinds shut, and then she made a mistake. It came in the form of an email sent to the HOA board members, but accidentally forwarded to the wrong Sarah. Not the one on the board, our Sarah, the good one. The email was pure venom. Email from Karen. "We have to push harder. If Jake files anything with zoning, we flood his mailbox. Noise complaints, utility reports, public nuisance accusations. Make him look unstable. Let the mountain swallow him. He's alone. No one will care." Sarah sent it to me with one word: fight. That's when I realized something else. I wasn't alone anymore. Carlos, the retired firefighter, he showed up with post-hole diggers and said, "Let's finish that fence." Sarah brought the PTA moms to help plant wildflowers around the posts, a beautification project. Eric, the single dad, he offered to install motion-activated cameras. And the next day, I woke up to find a dozen handmade signs staked along the road. "Mountain belongs to the rancher, not the HOA. Stop the land grab. Karen can't climb this high." Narrator: renewed determination. They tried to isolate me, but now they were the ones feeling cornered, and the deeper I dug, the more the rot came out. I uncovered something big. In a buried HOA filing from 5 years ago, I found that Karen, then just a board member, had quietly approved a discretionary budget that funneled funds into landscaping contracts. The company, Summit Services, LLC, registered under her cousin's name, on paper, but the payments routed into a joint bank account Karen shared with her second husband, a name she hadn't used since her divorce. That, and I had the proof. Narrator: stone cold victory brewing. Karen didn't just try to ruin me. She built her little empire on lies. And now the mountain wasn't just a fight over land. It was a war over who gets to tell the story. Her version, with luxury condos and tidy hedges, or mine, raw, untamed, honest. The county board hearing was set. The ethics investigation into Carl Dawson was now official. KAI stood at the edge of my ridge, looking down at the valley below, at the rooftops and cul-de-sacs, at the manufactured harmony of HOA-controlled living, and you picked the wrong mountain. Narrator: closing line for chapter. The conspiracy wasn't over, but now I had the receipts, and Karen, she was about to find out what happens when you scream too loud from a porch that sits on my land. To be continued. The breaking point, narrator. Voice trembling with restrained fury. You know that moment in every storm, right before the lightning strikes, when the air turns still and heavy like the world is holding its breath? That's where we were. The lies were unraveling, the mountain was shaking. And Karen? Karen was about to break. It started with the hearing. People packed the room. The energy was electric. Neighbors came wearing Team Jake buttons. Others sat stiff in HOA blazer blue, clutching their pearls and their property values. Karen strutted in wearing a power suit like she was walking into a photo shoot. Chin up, smirk polished, flanked by Carl Dawson and two attorneys in tailored suits. But the moment she saw me, her face is missing. I walked in with Samantha Cho, my lawyer. Behind us were Sarah, Carlos, Eric, and three other neighbors who had once been silent, now bold. And on a flash drive in Samantha's purse? This, see, there have been rumors and personal attacks, but we are here to discuss the land. The top ridge is subject to dispute, and our client, the HOA, seeks legal clarification on ownership. They thought this was about paperwork until Samantha stood. Samantha, fire in her voice. The petitioner has submitted forged documents, filed fraudulent maps, and withheld key boundary records. We move to dismiss the reclassification petition entirely and open an ethics investigation into the HOA board. A murmur, Karen tried to smile. I don't know what she's talking about, she said, but she did. Narrator, voice sharp. Slow. It was all there. The funneling of HOA funds, the conflict of interest, the signatures that didn't match, and the kicker. Karen's voice cracked. She stood, waving her hands like she could erase what was on screen. Karen, this is a smear campaign. He's manipulating all of you. I made this neighborhood what it is. Her face twisted, not just in anger, but panic. Fear. You think this mountain makes you better than us? You think you're untouchable? I will bury you in zoning. Appeals. You hear me? I will ruin you. The county chair banged the gavel. One of the board members whispered to a clerk, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Narrator, quietly. I thought that would be the end. I thought the truth would close the curtain. But some people don't fall. They claw on the way down. And Karen, she still had teeth. The next morning, I woke up to noise. Not birds, not wind, engines, trucks, bulldozers, men with clipboards. I ran out to the ridge, heart pounding. They were grading my fence line. I shouted, waved, demanded they stop. One man pointed at a permit taped to the hood of his truck. Emergeets, say it wasn't real. It couldn't be, but they were already carving a path through my land. I called Samantha. I called the sheriff. But permits, even forged ones, have power until they're proven fake. By the time the dust settled, the entire northern edge of my property had been bulldozed. The fence posts we spent weeks on, torn like matchsticks. My land scarred, and no one could stop them. Yet. That night, I broke. I stood by the wreckage, fists clenched, rage bubbling under my skin. Sarah brought dinner. Carlos lit a fire. But I didn't sit. I just stood, staring at the road carved into my earth, like a scar I couldn't unsee. Narrator, voice cracking. I tried everything. I played by the law. I kept my temper. The trusts and still. They found a way to take. Carlos looked at me and said, "You need to hit back harder." Sarah, and I said nothing until Eric showed up, breathless, holding his phone. He found something. The permit, it was fake, but it wasn't just forged by Karen or Carl. It had been stamped by a woman named Beverly Yates, the assistant director of the fire department's planning division. Turns out she was dating a board member. HOA politics had infected everything. That Samantha filed for an injunction to halt any more fire clearance, but it would take days to process. Narrator, voice slow, determined. That night, I sat on my porch, alone, under the stars. I watched the wind dance through broken grass and splintered fence rails. And I asked myself the question every fighter faces when they're bleeding on the floor. Is it worth it? The mountain didn't answer. But in the silence, I found something else. Resolve. The next morning, I did something unexpected. I walked down to the clubhouse, and I asked to speak at the emergency HOA meeting. People whispered, stared, but they let me. I stood at the front, holding nothing but a folded sheet of paper and my pride stitched back together with duct tape. Jake, monologue, raw. I moved here to find peace, to be alone, to heal. But what I've found is that peace doesn't come when you run from people. It comes when you stand your ground. You've let Karen control your lives with threats and gossip, but I'm not afraid of her anymore. And maybe you don't have to be either. I hit matter, but I saw it. The cracks. Doubt, to narrator, a beat of hope. I didn't need them to rise all at once. I just needed the four, and that came from Mrs. Ellison, the oldest woman in the HOA. She'd voted with Karen on every issue. But now, she stood, cleared her throat, and said, "I think it's time we reevaluate who's running this place." The room erupted. Karen wasn't there to defend herself, but her power had already been splintered. People began shouting for votes. Others demanded audits. I walked out as the room turned on itself. Not triumphant. Not yet. But the tide? It was shifting. Narodar, closing note. That was the breaking point. Not just for Karen, but for me, for the community, for the whole damn mountain. Everything cracked, but in the cracks, light started to shine. The next chapter? That's where the twist hits. Because just when I thought I understood who the enemy was, it found out.